Brent. This is Fred. I retired a couple of years ago as a news guy from CTV News up in Kitchener, so I spend most of my time down in Port Dover now, where I kind of live, but I've been down there 30 years. I've had a sailboat, and my neighbor, of course, is Fred Rozniak here, and I found him to be a heck of a good guy, very interesting guy, certainly one of my best friends. So we'll get right into the interview now, because 83 years is a lot of ground to cover. Fred, can you tell me what was your first memory when as you were growing up?
I really can't remember too far back because I was born very young, eh? But of on the farm, or?
Yeah, on the farm, yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
But
you mentioned one time about you didn't have very much, and your dad made honey.
Yep.
That was one of your first memories? How did that go?
He didn't buy any bees, but they would swarm, and you would hear them coming, then you could see swarms of them, and he'd get us boys out and just make all the noise you could. Of course, that was easy for us boys.
Yeah.
But the noise makes them land.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but so we'd hammer away at old pails or buckets, and first thing you know, they'd land on a limb on an apple tree or something, and then you'd have to cut the limb to shake them off, and he would come up
Now,
with
what we're talking about here is it would be like back in the 1935 or 1936 or something like
right
that.
around in there.
So
yep.
you didn't have much money, and something a little bit sweet would be quite welcome to you.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any maple trees around back then.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't anyway.
And it was a long walk to the store, and you probably didn't have any money anyway.
No.
Tell me about your mom and dad, and start to tell me about your mom first. Now, she came from the old country, and that would have been where?
You mean where did she
Come
land?
from? Yeah, no, where did she come
came
from originally?
Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
And she was living in a small village, and they were going to send one person over to the new country.
Mm-hmm.
And she was chosen. So it was kind of luck there.
So, okay, so let me get this straight. She was living in a small village in the Ukraine. Do you happen to know where?
She always said she was about 40 to 50 kilometers from Kiev.
Okay.
So that kind of...
Yeah, in the southern part of the country. And so nobody had any money there, and so it was very difficult for people to get to the Ukraine, and so they kind of had to get their money together and send one person.
Yep, that was the way it kind of worked.
That's unbelievable.
Yep, yep.
So how did they choose her?
You know, I really haven't heard from, she never told me really.
Yeah, I suppose it would be like a lottery or something like that. How old was she when she got here? Do you know?
She was in her 20s, early
Okay.
20s, yep.
And so she came, she'd be in her early 20s. Did she know anybody here? Was there somebody here?
Yeah, she had a cousin.
Mm-hmm.
See, her maiden name was Hustle.
Yeah.
And that name over in the Ukraine is kind of as popular as Brown or Black or
Mm-hmm.
in Ontario here.
Okay, and so over she comes and she lands, and she's staying with them on a farm in the area
Farm,
someplace?
Yep.
All right, let's move on to your dad. How did he get over here?
You know, I don't remember too. He was close to Romania,
Mm-hmm.
in a area called the Bukovina,
Yeah.
if anybody knows where that is.
Yeah, and he would have probably gotten here by hook or by crook any way he could, you know,
Yep.
to come to Canada.
Yep.
Where did he end up?
They all end up in Toronto or Montreal, one or the other.
Yeah, he ended up in Montreal,
No,
or Toronto?
in Toronto.
How did he get down to this neck of the woods?
We had hustles
Okay,
that were down there that sponsored him, you see,
okay.
because you couldn't just get in just that easy.
Yeah. Okay, so he comes down here to work and live. What do you know what he did to?
He worked in Toronto in Swift's meat packing company as a kill man, eh?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then how did he get down here?
Due to that was a cousin.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So he comes down, and he's probably in his 20s as well.
Yep. And he bought that little farm,
Mm-hmm.
25 and a half acres, And see, you couldn't own land in the old country.
Yeah.
You could work it, but you could never own property. Apparently, that's what I was led to believe. And when they got that, they couldn't believe that they owned that land that they were working.
Yeah, I believe what it was back in the Ukraine was that they were serfs, and
Yep.
and they worked their whole life for somebody else. So
Yep.
it was like a bonanza coming here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he comes and he buys his little 25-acre farm, and he's probably looking for a wife, isn't he?
Yep.
And your mom happened to be close by.
Yep. Well, see, Mrs. Hustle told Mom, she was staying there, said, we'll have to get him down for supper or Sunday dinner, because he was a bachelor and he owned this little property. So that's how they got together.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Because back in those days, it was kind of difficult, I think, to meet somebody. Even these days we're all on the internet and plenty of fish or whatever it's called, and we think it's difficult to meet somebody. Back then, it was really difficult to meet somebody.
Sure.
Because it was probably would have been horse and buggy.
Yep.
And the nearest place would have been Simcoe, and you would have had to walk to that. So they got married, obviously, and she came to live with him on the farm.
Yep. You know, I got something at home. I got all their wedding pictures blown up, like a studio.
Yeah.
And that's something a lot of people don't even have today, eh?
Yeah.
Because that wasn't cheap to get that done, but it's worth it now.
Sure. Now, tell me a little bit about the farmstead. What was the house like? Was there a house on it, or did he have to build
No, Dad built every
He
building
built the
on
house.
it. Dug the basement. It was sand, though. He dug it by hand.
Was your mom around there to help him, or he did that?
Yes, because that's they were.
And she would have helped him. Okay, so
yeah.
there would be, was there running water in the house?
Nothing running, just kids. Yeah.
So no electricity.
No.
Um,
Coal oil lamps and lanterns, hand lanterns.
And a wood stove for heat and to
yeah.
cook.
Yep. And it was cold.
Yeah, I
Them
bet it
winters
was.
were cold.
Yes. And what did they raise?
A lot of it was hoeing crops, eh?
Yeah.
On your knees planting and weeding and all that. That somebody else
Yeah.
doesn't like that kind of work, but you're used to it and it's your own.
Yeah. That would have been a bonus for them, knowing them
Yeah,
that this
back
was.
then Simcoe had canning companies.
Yeah.
I think Waterford had one then. There was a lot of that around. Now,
But even the farm probably cost $700 or $800 back then. They had to do anything, but you still owed that money, and you probably didn't make enough money off the farm. So did they have to work out?
oh yeah, tobacco was coming in then.
That was right in the heyday of when tobacco
Yep,
started.
it was all around us. And believe it or not, that's what a lot of people done, eh?
Yeah.
You could work in tobacco year-round back then. You stripped in the winter
Yeah.
and worked in the...
Okay, so your mom, she worked in tobacco?
Yep,
Your dad worked in tobacco too?
yep,
And then they would come home and then they'd do their own work.
yep,
Yeah, that's the way it was.
yep,
And then the family started.
yeah.
Tell me a bit about that.
Well,
How many kids and such?
I can tell you the good and the bad. Like burning with a wood stove, there were a lot of times chimney fires. I don't know if anybody realizes, but chimney fires were burned a lot of homes down. Eh?
Yeah.
There was always a ladder laying at the side of the house, and you would put it against the wall to get up on the roof. And on the roof there'd be a permanent ladder that's fixed to the roof. So you would get to the chimney, dump a pail of water in. Now you can imagine my mother would, but it had to be done.
Or then get the ladder and get out if you had to.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember Dad, there was mother was hollering, and he was out at the barn shop quite a ways away in the backyard. And we had a big backyard. Used to take all morning for there to go get the mail.
So the fire department nowadays tells you should have a plan in case you have a fire. So you really had a plan then.
Oh yeah.
To get down out of there. Okay, so there was 3 boys in your family, and you were the youngest.
Yep,
Life was hard for you, or not so bad?
not so bad.
Yeah.
No,
You
I
came
don't
up through some of the worst part of the Depression. Were you ever hungry or cold or?
never.
Yeah.
No. Back then, the tobacco factory, Imperial Tobacco Factory in Brantford, Delhi, was going, and Dad would walk, and this was mostly in the wintertime is when they were hiring, and he would walk to number 3 highway. If he was a little early, he'd wait for his ride, whether it was winter or what, and then get a ride into Delhi.
Didn't have a car? Couldn't
No,
afford a car?
We didn't get a car till it was way up in the 30s.
Wow.
Yeah, we were horse and buggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember back then, whichever side road you took to get to Simcoe, always had a creek there. And you were told by Dad or Mom was driving, you got to run through, give the horse a drink, and wet the wheels down, especially in the summertime, because the tire would get loose on the
Oh yeah.
buggy, and Dad would have to.
Okay. So then you were able to go to school, were you?
Yeah.
And there was a one-room schoolhouse around
Just
someplace?
a one-room schoolhouse. Wasn't far enough away to, I'd be home for lunch.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you were lucky in that regard.
Yeah.
So you went to what grade?
8.
And then what happened?
That was it. Had to go work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, and you probably worked in tobacco as well?
Yep.
What happened to the money that you made
It went in the household.
to help pay for the farm and everything?
Yep. If I went into town on Saturday night or farmer's night, that was Saturday nights back then.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of going in and being broke, I'd ask Mom or I wouldn't even have to ask. She'd give me a $5 bill, and that was what you'd.
So that's what you got out of your wages. So, did that make you mad, or was that
No,
okay?
That went to pay off your mortgage if there,
Yeah.
That was the first thing them people wanted to get rid of.
And you had 2 older brothers, and they probably did the same thing.
Yep.
And did they go on to any higher education?
Murray was the intelligent, smart one, my oldest brother, and he never had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yep, he should have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then you probably got some money together, and then you moved homes to get a better place.
Get a bigger farm.
Got a bigger farm.
Boys were growing.
Yeah.
You had your help there.
Yeah. And did you have to build a house on that farm as well?
Later years we did. Yeah, it was an old house.
Yeah.
We built in there.
So
in the
you were no
40s.
stranger to manual labor then, let's
No.
say, in our regard.
No.
Tell me about your interest in automobiles, because that started at a fairly early age, didn't it?
Yeah, first car I bought was from my brother. He worked around Port Hope for Bill Adams. He had some tobacco farms there. And he had an old 29 Chev Roadster. And I've never seen another one.
Where'd you get the money for that?
My mom gave it to me because I'd been
You've been
paying
chipping in.
I needed $250, so she bought the car.
So that began your kind of love life with motor vehicles and such. Tell me about your love life. You don't have to go into specifics or anything
I
like that.
found out
but
that it was better than...
notice how I asked him about the automobiles before his love life. Got to have priorities here.
Yeah, well, I met the wife, Anna, and her sister coming out of the new Lutheran church in Simcoe, and she was 12 years old and
How old were you?
15. Never had a car or a license. Used to come in with a neighbor fella, he had a car. And I'll never forget that. He had a 36 Chev, and the steering was bad. And he could spin that wheel. He'd have to spin the wheel to tighten up if we wanted to turn left and go the other way if you had to turn right.
Tell me about how you met Anna.
Her and her sister was coming out.
So
of
what did you
church.
do? Just walk up and say, "I'm Fred," or?
I just...
Anyway, you met them that day, though.
Yep, the both of them.
Yeah.
And she had told Anna, or Anna had told Wilma that night, she said, "That's the man I'm going to marry."
You.
Yeah.
She was 12 years old, you were 15.
Yep.
Okay, moving along then. You did get married,
Oh, yeah.
and tell us about that.
Well, it was a big wedding at the Legion, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Indoor.
No, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. How old was Anna when you married her?
She wasn't 13 yet,
That's when you met her. You married her when?
just shortly after.
Yeah.
Not that long.
Yes.
Yep.
And you would have been 16 or 17 or something like that.
About that, yep.
Yes. So, didn't the law have anything to say about that? Like, wasn't that?
I was no monster, you know.
No,
I didn't hardly know anybody else.
it was the same thing. But what did you had to go to her parents and say, is it okay if I marry your
Yeah.
14
Yeah,
or 15-year-old daughter?
Both parents had to sign.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Oh, and then it was okay. It was legal.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to go through that again, but
No. And then it's your turn to set up shop, set up a house and stuff. How did that go?
we got married, and Anna insisted we get a place in Dover, because she was a Dover girl, eh?
Yeah.
And
So she would have still been 14, 15, 16, something like that then.
that's about it, yep.
Okay, go on,
Yep.
sorry.
But we got in, we seen the place that we were going to buy. It was $5,000 back then.
Yeah.
We're still there after, I am anyway, but she's,
Yes, unfortunately, Anna passed away
Yep.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah,
After
well,
63
3 years
years
ago.
of marriage, 63
Yep.
years of marriage. That's obviously very tough on you. Then, how did you decide on a trucking for a career?
well, we had a farm truck,
Yeah,
an old 34 Ford V8 stake.
yeah,
And I started drawing hay. People wanted loose hay. We never had baled hay back then.
mm-hmm,
A lot of people were feeding loose hay.
yeah,
So you'd take a load of that back and forth, and
yeah.
Yep.
And then you eventually got up to, having your own big truck, and you helped build a portion of the 401. The 401 was going in back then.
yeah. Well, my brother Elmer, he's gone now. He was a superintendent for highway construction in Simcoe.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a 12-mile stretch. It all went out in 12 miles to different companies, construction companies. And he was staying in a motel there, so I come up, I bought a brand new truck in 58, dump truck. And he put me right to work.
And that work helped you pay for that truck, didn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
That paid for it back
Okay.
in there.
So then you got a job that gave you the unbelievable opportunity of driving truck from one end of the country to the other.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
That was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You meet all kinds of people, and every person all are good people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something brings out the good, something brings out the bad.
Yeah.
And it was easier back then, I think, to find somebody that were
Yeah,
good.
but I mean, the roads wouldn't have been as good either.
No, winters were bad too. Snow up to here, you know.
Did you ever crash a truck?
No, fortunately. No.
You never did. You drove all those years and you never
Yep.
crashed a truck.
Yep.
Now, what did you do? You delivered what? Some food?
First, it was ice cream products.
Ice cream products.
Yep. I was good in the wintertime, but boy, summertime, you were looking in that mirror all the time, make sure the reefer's working, eh?
That's the refrigeration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to have that.
Yeah. And then you delivered something else too. What?
Pies.
So it was
Mrs.
food.
Smith's
That
pie.
must have been real tough to make sure that stuff never spoiled, even though
Yeah,
you
but
have
you
it
never
frozen.
went hungry.
Yeah, or the cops wanted a bribe. I suppose that was
Yeah.
no problem.
Everybody on the scale,
Either.
you'd weighed every axle, and then they'd holler out the window on a
Yeah.
speaker, says, driver, you're a couple of dozen pies heavy on the axle there. So, no problem.
So then you would take off from this area and you drive, say, you drive up to all the kind of major cities across the country and
Yeah,
drop off your pies?
Vancouver that way, and then even Newfoundland.
Yeah, and that was pretty steady work, was it?
Yep, all you wanted.
Really?
Yep,
Okay, well, that would have taken you away from home a lot, wouldn't it?
yep.
How did that play out?
You find out who your friends are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Anna, your wife, she did most of the raising of the kids, I would assume.
yep, yep. I got to admit that a lot of drivers had problems at home. Boy, I'd phone home, and if that phone rang more than 5 or 6 times, you'd start worrying.
Mm-hmm.
But there was nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
And she raised the kids.
yeah, and you took them on trips too, though, didn't you? As much as you could.
I think I had Steve with me
Steve, his
Yep.
Fred's son here, yeah.
change his diaper.
Knowing Steve, he probably could have changed his
Yeah.
own diaper.
Yeah.
Now, that was quite a number of years of going back and forth across this unbelievably huge and beautiful country of ours. What did you find out? I guess maybe let's start out quickly about what you found out about yourself about this, about doing something like that you could obviously do it. And
I liked it because Anna could come. Back then, you just signed a
waiver.
waiver, and even the kids could come. See, which
Sure.
a lot of places couldn't. I don't think you could do it today that easy.
Yeah.
And so she's seen a lot of country too.
Yeah. Now we're covering kind of the same territory, but what about the people? You met people right from the west, all the way to the east, and I wish we had more time to hear some of these, fabulous stories. But tell me about the people.
The East people, like if I had a choice, I like the good out west, don't get me wrong, but being Ukrainian, there's more in Saskatchewan than there is in Waterford, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And Waterford has plenty.
Yes.
But the people in the East, I don't know, I think maybe they've went through harder times because they seem to be my favorite.
Yeah, I think they're maybe packed a little closer together there too, and they have to
Yep.
put up with each other. Do you have any regrets about, what you did, the life you led, or anything like that? No? Would you do it again?
Yep.
Would you?
I wouldn't have missed it for $1 million, but I might not do it for about 10.
Okay, I think our time is up. Thanks very much, Fred, for sharing that with us.
Thank you,
It's
Brent.
a very interesting
Yep.
life. Okay. We're not quite finished yet. We can take some questions from the audience if you'd like. Just get up to the microphone there, and yeah, I'd like one more question to ask you too.
Hi, Fred. Thanks for for sharing all of your stories with us. You were starting to talk about the good and the bad in people.
The what?
You were talking about the good and the bad in people when you were out trucking. Do you remember you were starting to say something about that? I wondered if you could elaborate.
Like I said, yeah, there's good and bad in people, and if you can bring the good out, you're further ahead. And there's a lot of good people out there. A lot.
Mm-hmm. You met a few people. You met when you were down east. You met Stompin' Tom.
Tom Connors, you bet.
And now,
He's got a hand on him about 3 times as big as mine.
how did you meet? How did you run into him?
He passed me on the Trans-Canada going down in New Brunswick. And he had a pickup with a plywood back on it, pretty high. And he had a great big plywood boot nailed on the side, on each side. And that was his calling card, see,
Yeah.
Stompin' Tom. And this was about going on 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I knew he'd be in Fredericton at that restaurant, truck stop that would be open. So when I got there, sure enough, that pickup was there. So I went in, And he's sitting by himself in the corner having a cup of coffee. And I come over and I said, he had his black hat on. And I come over, held my hand out, and I said, Stompin' Tom Connors, I presume. God, he got up, and he grabbed me by the arm. And nobody seemed to know him in there. The waitress in there, she was busy picking the Pepsi tops out of the...
Because you had a prize in the...
Yeah. That's what, she was obsessed with that.
God, that was a while back, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, was it you who ran into Johnny Cash as well?
Yep.
Where'd you run into him?
Ottawa.
Yeah.
Had a beer with him.
Really?
Yep.
Well, he was known to like a few beers.
That's for sure. He'd been known to participate.
Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Hi, Fred. I was wondering, when you said you knew who your friends were, did you mean that when you were away, the people of Dover helped Anna? And
That's who you found out who your friends were, because they'd phone, want to know when I'd be back, eh? Of course, Anna would tell me all about it. Eh? So this is when you find out who your friends are.
Yeah. So that made you more comfortable when you took off. And when you mentioned when you got back home, you really wouldn't have much time back home, and they'd want to send you back on the road again.
Oh yeah, I'd be halfway back from Vancouver, and I'd be in Edmonton, and phone the shop, like the factory in Simcoe there, and the dispatcher would say, "Where are you?" I told him, "When you gonna be here?" "Oh, a couple of days yet, maybe." I got a couple of loads ready to go back out again, see, so.
They had to move those pies.
Yeah.
And that was in the day, obviously, that there was no internet, or you couldn't pick up your phone. You had to find a phone on the way someplace and dial and hope for this.
It'd be easier to write a letter, really, but
Yeah.
that was it.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Okay. Thanks very much for coming out and sharing this with us. And thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Brent.
Yep. Fred Rozniak.